Good morning.
Good morning.
You've decided to run for Congress.
That's correct.
Introduce yourself to our folk and give us a little of your background. We'll go from there.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Jonathan, for having me here. I really appreciate it. Excited about your endeavor with this magazine and your YouTube channel, or is it a newspaper?
Well, we have several newspapers, but we're going to have our very new, exciting print daily, but also
Good.
we've got our other publications, and then of course our more visual presentations, which
Okay.
you'll be up later today.
Well, very good, very good. Well, I'm Cindy Axne, and I'm running for the U.S. Congress here in District 3 against David Young. I'm a fifth-generation Iowan. I grew up on the south side before moving over here to West Des Moines, which is now where I live with my husband and my two teenage boys, who keep us quite busy. My husband and I are small business owners. We have a digital design firm. It's called Creation Agents, and we do a lot of website work and things like that. I was raised, like I said, on the south side. My parents are both from farms in southern Iowa, and I have two sisters. And a couple of things that they taught us at a very young age is really stuck with me, and it's why I'm running for Congress. They said, girls, take care of your friends and your family, but also take care of other people in your community, because when everybody does well, our community does well. And they said to stand up and fight back against injustice, even when it means standing up to people who are more powerful than you. And it's really how I've tried to live my life and why I've made some of the decisions that I've done in my career. It's why I spent the bulk of my career at the state of Iowa. Had the opportunity to serve Iowans under 3 different governors, oversaw strategic initiatives for the state. So directed a lot of complex statewide initiatives. I was at the Department of Management, which is the governor's right-hand arm for performance and budget. Helped to bring in good-paying jobs to the people here in the state, give a voice to those who don't have a voice at the table, and make sure that we hold government accountable to doing what's right for the people that live here. And in the meantime, finding a heck of a lot of efficiencies and saving taxpayers millions of dollars. And then I had an opportunity to serve as a division administrator at the Department of Natural Resources, certainly protecting our environment.
What was the division?
It was a Management Services Division. Oversaw about 10 different units, all of the back-end operations from HR and IT for 1,000 employees in 99 counties, to a lot of the front end, like engineering in our parks and hunting and fishing licensing and AmeriCorps. So really, spent the bulk of my career helping Iowans. It's what I wanted to do. And then done a lot of work for our community as well.
You mentioned 3 different governors, so you did those 2 jobs under 3 different governors.
Well, that's right. So I started out under Governor Vilsack at the Department of Administrative Services, then moved to the Department of Management under Governor Culver, and was asked to run a division at the DNR under Governor Culver, but stayed there until about 3.5 years ago, which is when Governor Branstad was in office.
Okay. Now, in terms of your decision to run for this office, you've described some outstanding executive experience, but you're running for a legislative post. So talk about why this particular office.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that this office in particular gives me an opportunity to do what I would like to do for Iowans, which is to help bring in good paying jobs, to make sure that we address our healthcare issues, and make sure that we as Americans have a choice with our democracy. And so to me, this is a role that I think I could fulfill very well from the perspective that I bring to the table, which is pretty vast. So I have public servant experience, but I also have small business experience. I understand what it takes to develop and grow a small business here in Iowa. I also have Fortune 1000 experience, had the opportunity to get my MBA and then work for large companies as well. So I have pretty vast experience in understanding what it takes in a corporate environment to run a small business, and certainly from a public servant experience. And when we need to bring in good paying jobs and we need to make sure that Iowans have what they need to be raised up, those are good skills to bring to the table. I had the opportunity at the state as well to craft policy and to work with the legislature and to sit with the governor's office and make decisions about some of the issues that face Iowans, and then to actually go out and implement those around the state with the different departments that were charged with that implementation. I think having a good understanding of all that and having worked at all those different levels really lets me hit the ground running out in Washington.
Mm-hmm. Now, the job of a member of Congress is multifaceted. On the one hand, the job of a member of Congress is often perceived as voting with their party or with their party's leadership. But then there's also the committee work. Then there's also the extra activities that sometimes distinguish a member of Congress. That's where I want to start in terms of our interview. I am going to get into some policy specifics and find out where you stand on these issues, because some people might suggest that once the field is set, that regardless of who the candidate is, they might end up voting for the same things as the Democrat or voting for the same things as the Republican. I think it's a little more than that, though. So let's start off with the committees. Based upon your unique experiences, what committees have you looked at, if you're elected, what committees have you looked at that you would like to serve on if you become a member of the United States Congress?
Sure. Well, there's a heck of
Or specifically the United States House of Representatives.
That's right. Well, there's definitely multiple committees that I'd like to sit on, but I think there's some priorities for Iowans. First and foremost, I think it's really important for an Iowa representative to be on the Agriculture Committee. We've got so much opportunity here in this state to improve the economy and help our farmers while making sure we move towards sustainable agriculture and new technology to build jobs within that industry. So,
and let's go there. It's just, you mentioned sustainable agriculture, and I used to be a parliamentarian, and so I tell people, you can jump in for points of clarification. So, sustainable agriculture. What does that mean? Because a lot of people use that term.
Sure.
But like I think it was Fenwick said in The Princess Bride, I don't know that term means what you think it means. So what does sustainable agriculture mean to you or look like to you?
Yeah, it means that we're producing economic viability for our farmers and our state in general, while at the same time preserving our soil health and our water quality, and working against climate change at the same time as well. So to me, it means figuring out new practices that benefit farmers by retaining our soil nutrients. So for instance, new practices around tilling depending on the specific seed that's being planted and how far down we need to go. So we have an opportunity there to control the tillage level so that we release less carbon into the atmosphere, and at the same time capture that carbon and sink it deep into the ground so that we don't release it again. So that requires research and technology and money to be spent towards that, as well as development of manufacturing tools that will help with that process. So that's one example of sustainable agriculture. How can we make sure that the processes that farmers put in place benefit them, but also benefit our environmental issues? Another example is cover crops. We have cover crops that we use here in Iowa, as you're fully aware, but we don't use very many of them. And we could increase that numbers to about 10 to 15 different types of cover crops, depending on the soil and the topography that's being farmed. And because of that, we've got opportunity to create an incredible value stream. So if we're looking at developing 10 more different types of cover crops here in Iowa, we're going to need consultants to go work with the farmers and to determine which seed is best for their soil and the weather and the topography that they have there. Then we're going to need producers and processors of the seeds, as well as sales and distributions.
Now, those things as a member of the committee that you're going to be weighing in on.
Yes.
If you're a member of the Agricultural Committee, are those things you'll be weighing in on?
Absolutely. We absolutely need to look at agriculture in in our state and in this country from the perspective of what's good for our long term and what's also good for our farmers and our economy.
So then if you're a member of the Agricultural Committee, what's your position on ethanol, grain-based ethanol?
Well, I'll tell you what.
Because that's something the federal government does, is subsidize that.
That's right. That's right. I think, certainly we have moved. I think there's always been an issue with ethanol. Some people say, well, it's not clean enough. And others say, well, it really helps with our economy and it helps with our farming and it is clean. So, it's moved a lot in the direction to be much cleaner than it used to be. And so it's way cleaner than coal. And there's new production opportunities that are allowing it to be a much cleaner production. However, there are still cleaner ways to produce energy.
And switchgrass-based ethanol.
That's right. And so, so I think there's opportunity there to look at how we produce ethanol and the products that go into that production to make sure that we're as sustainable as possible.
So if you're a member of the Agricultural Committee, are you going to push for ethanol subsidies? Grain-based ethanol subsidies, because we're corn and bean based.
That's right.
Ag state.
Here's what I'm going to push for. I'm going to make sure that our farmers and our businesses that have already committed to this particular industry, that they've got what they need to be successful, because we've made that commitment to them, and we've made a commitment to Iowans that this would help with our economy and our tax base. Now, at the same time, we've got opportunity to start moving a little bit away from grain-based and move towards other opportunities like algae. So we've got opportunity to build in this capacity as well. I'd like to see us figure out what that happy medium looks like. And I don't have that solution yet, but I want to make sure that we move towards that for Iowans.
One of the things, my very first experience having worked on Capitol Hill in D.C. was I learned that there just comes a point where you got to vote yes or no. It is one of the harshest realities of being a federal legislator.
Sure.
So when it comes down to that vote, yes, continue the ethanol subsidies, no, discontinue them.
I think at this point in time, I'd say yes, continue the ethanol subsidies.
Another question, if you're on the Ag Committee, because one of the major impediments to us truly having an agrarian economy in Iowa is we produce fuel, feed, and meat, and some food, but there are restrictions in terms of how much food we produce if we want to maintain our corn and bean subsidies. Mm-hmm. What's your position on that issue? Since you mentioned you want to be on the Agricultural Committee.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, we've got lots of families and children in this state who don't have enough to eat. We've got food scarcity issues. And as a matter of fact, the elementary school that I went to here on the south side of Des Moines has a 99% rate of free and reduced lunches for our kids because they just don't have the food to eat at home. I'd like to see us feed the people here in our state. We absolutely need to produce it for livestock, for feed, as you just discussed, but we've got opportunity there to help Iowans have good, clean food. And I think that's something that we really need to look at. We're the breadbasket of the world, and we've got people in our own community who don't have enough to eat, and that's not right. And we need to make sure that those people have good food on their table. So I think there's opportunity there to do both.
Yeah, according to Feeding America, nearly 400,000, around 375,000 hungry Iowans. So in terms of your being a member of the Agricultural Committee, and this is an important issue. Do you support maintaining the current federal quota system that then says Iowa, you can have some folks grow potatoes, but you really can't grow potatoes. You really can't grow tomatoes. You really can't grow all those other crops you could grow, onions and broccoli and Brussels sprouts, because we'll cut your subsidy? Or do you say, you know what, we've got hungry people here, we've got the best, richest soil in the world, it's worth risking our federal subsidies for corn and bean in order to be able to feed our people and realize our potential in terms of being an agrarian economy again?
Yeah, well, That's a pretty complex question to answer because you have to take into consideration a heck of a lot of variables there. Yes, do I want to see us move towards more of our food being produced for consumption? Absolutely. But we also have farmers and communities and economies who are relying on those subsidies. Our state economy is relying on those things. So it's not just an easy switch off. So I really have to dig in and determine what's going to be the best process for that. We want our farmers to be successful. We want our communities to have economic opportunity. But I also want to make sure that certainly every single person in Iowa has access to good, clean food. So it's something where I'm going to have to go in and look at what's the happy medium there. We can't just pull subsidies away from people who are receiving those without giving them opportunity to produce something that's going to be economically viable for them. So we'd really want to look at that as a multi-pronged process to make sure that we're still giving that economic opportunity to those farmers that they're receiving right now so that they can maintain and grow their crops. But we also have to make sure, like I said earlier, that we are making sure that every single person here goes to sleep with a full belly and wakes up getting some breakfast. So I think it's a complicated question. I'll certainly be looking at where are those subsidies appropriate and where are they not appropriate, and how can we transfer some of our crop production over to making food for the people that live in this state. But I really need to dig in and look at all the variables around that before saying, here's exactly what I would do.
Well, and you mentioned Iowa is the breadbasket of the world, but as a state, we import 85 to 90% of the food we consume. We have approximately a $7.2 billion food trade deficit in Iowa. Last question as it relates to the Ag Committee. If you had the power, what are 2 or 3 critical things you would include in a federal farm bill?
Well, I definitely think we need to have a requirement for our farms to ensure good water quality. So if farmers are receiving subsidies, if they're receiving taxpayer dollars to ensure that they have success, well then they need to make sure that they're contributing to cleaning up our waterways. So I want that to be something that's in there.
So you make that a federal mandate?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
I'll tell you what. I've been here in the state at the Department of Management and at the Department of Natural Resources during voluntary compliance, and we know that it's not working for us. We've got a lot of really good Iowans who are good stewards of this environment. I know a heck of a lot of farmers that are certainly doing the right things to protect our water and to protect our soil. But we certainly have large corporate farms, and especially owned by people from out of state, that aren't as heavily regulated as they should be in our CAFOs, because it just hasn't been included. And we also need to update our Clean Water Act to make sure that those regulations are there and that they're being enforced. So we've just got some outliers there that need to be addressed.
So one aspect of your farm bill would be a mandate related to clean water. What are a couple other things that would be in your farm bill?
Yeah, I think we need to look at a carbon tax credit for our farmers, just like our other industries have. If we're going to expect our agriculture community to live up to the expectations of other industries, then we really need to have similar expectations for them.
And then the last thing that you would prioritize in a farm bill?
Well, I think that we absolutely need to make sure that we're looking at different types of crops here in Iowa, and to your point earlier, crops that feed people. So those would be things that we need to put into our farm bill, making sure that some of our production is used to feed the people here in Iowa, making sure that the parameters are in place, that they have clean environmental practices, and ensuring that there's opportunity for farmers too, like other industries, with a carbon tax credit.
So you see the agricultural committee having a heavy responsibility to first be more of a regulatory committee and less emphasis on it being what it has been at times, which is a cheerleader for the agribusiness industry.
Well, I don't know if I'd go so far as to say I think it should just strictly act as a regulatory committee.
I'm not saying strictly. I said first, primary, first.
Yeah.
first and foremost.
I think it serves both of those purposes, and I think that's probably one of the issues that right now we haven't probably done as much as we need to from a regulatory perspective, but we need to balance those two things, and that's where I feel we need somebody who's going to go in there and really be thoughtful about everybody who's involved in this process. Our farmers, our communities, and the other citizens in the state that feel the effects of some of the practices in agriculture here. So we've just got to consider all of those opportunities and make sure that we're making the right decisions.
In terms of last line of question as it relates to agriculture and food, because it seems to me that the ag function within Congress might be a little different than what we ought to be seeing from the Food and Drug Administration. I'll throw out a couple of examples, and then I'll move on to see what other committees you would look at. But one of the big concerns that I think Congress and the FDA need to absolutely look at is American consumption of fruits and vegetables produced outside of America, particularly in places where they still use DDT, which we ban. And then also the impact of hormone, particularly in our food products, especially dairy products. I had a chance to talk to Simon Estes, who's performing tonight, and he talked about when he lived in Europe, American dairy products were banned where he lived because of the impact they were having on children, particularly young girls. And yet our kids consume these products subsidized by our government, despite the empirical research that shows the havoc upon which is being wrought upon our children because of the hormones and chemicals put in it. What other committees have you looked at? Give us one or two other committees.
Well, one I'd really like to sit on, the oldest committee, Energy and Commerce. I mean, they've got their fingers in so many different things.
I smile because I don't know if you've ever seen Eddie Murphy's movie Distinguished Gentleman.
No.
But in that movie, he wants to serve on Power and Commerce, which is like the most powerful committee ever in Congress. But why Energy and Commerce?
Well, I mean, in addition to being involved with commerce and energy, of course, it deals with trade, it deals with health. There's a lot of things that are facing Iowans that this particular committee has its fingers in. And I think it would be a great, well-rounded opportunity for me to sit on that and represent Iowans. I think a lot of the issues that we're talking about right now are intermixed. Our health is dramatically impacted by our agriculture and by our environment. Our economy is heavily impacted by health and by economic opportunity. And one of the things that's really important to me in this race, well, in winning and becoming a congresswoman, is making sure that every single person here in Iowa has opportunity and we raise up those that are least among us. And that means we need to bring in good paying jobs and we need to look at the opportunities.
But as a member of Congress, how do you help to bring in those good paying jobs? What is the specific apparatus you utilize as a member of Congress to help bring in those good paying jobs? Because I've never met a politician who has not supported bringing in good paying jobs.
Sure.
But what is the apparatus? But if I'm talking to David Young or Steve King or Chuck Grassley, they're saying, well, we need good paying jobs, which is why we need this tax cut. And if I'm talking to a Democrat, then I might hear we need good paying jobs, which is why we need to strengthen unions. So what does it look like, you as a member of the House of Representatives, doing specifically to help create those good paying jobs?
Sure. Well, a couple of things. First of all, a good economy starts with a good infrastructure base. And so that's one thing that I want to put out there is a bill for infrastructure. We talk about it, they talk about it a lot out in Washington, and we've seen little results. But we've, in addition to our roads and bridges that need a heck of a lot of repair and work, as well as our cellular and broadband, and our water and sewer. Here in Iowa, we have some pipes that are 100 years old. They're failing. We put ourselves at risk as a result of that. So the first thing I want to do is put a bill together that gets us the resources that we need to fix our infrastructure issues here. Make sure that every single person in Iowa has access to cellular and broadband. We're out and about in this district.
Well, let me just ask you this thing with infrastructure. So when you put that infrastructure bill, I want to know a couple of specifics. Does that infrastructure bill manifest itself by contracting with private contractors, regardless of where they may reside, and they primarily do it, or does that infrastructure bill include perhaps some form of requirement like Davis-Bacon wages or project labor agreements that make sure that that money gets to workers within those communities and not just some big contractor coming in, subcontracting to a few of his buddies, and then all that money goes elsewhere, either out of the state or out of the country?
That's right. Absolutely. I want to make sure that this.
Well, there's a question. I'm not sure. I had put both things on there. So where do you stand in those type of specifics?
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what. I had the opportunity to oversee the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act money that came into Iowa through Obama's administration, and specifically oversight of the weatherization for low-income homes and transportation. So working heavily with those departments to make sure that we use that money properly, that we were transparent, and there was no collusion, and that we followed Davis-Bacon and hired Iowa workers as much as possible. And as a result of that, was able to see the impact that we had here in Iowa. So I absolutely want to make sure that we follow a very similar format to that. To ensure that as many Iowans as possible have opportunity for these jobs, to put our laborers to work developing this infrastructure, and making sure that we follow Davis-Bacon. We have to ensure that our workers receive appropriate wages, and that's a responsibility that we have. So absolutely, I'll be putting those parameters in place to ensure that our communities directly benefit from those resources.
One of the issues that has been a really difficult issue for Democrats operationally. In terms of the rhetoric, it's been easy. But that's been the issue of illegal immigration. On the one hand, we have a record of Secretary Clinton as a New York senator voting for the wall. And I draw this distinction because there are issues on both sides of the political aisle. On the other hand, we had President Obama, I published 2 Latino papers, gain the moniker deporter-in-chief because he deported more brown-skinned people than all other administrations in the history of the United States combined. On the other hand, Democrats talk about dreamers and DACA and compassion and sanctuary cities. And at the same time, we see a lot of Republicans who talk the rhetoric of we want to do something about illegal immigration and cheered the president's call for a wall. But every time a state talks about punishing employers who hire undocumented workers, the United States Chamber of Commerce, which is an auxiliary of the Republican Party of America, protests. And from Pete Wilson to Republican-owned companies, they are some of the major employers of illegal immigrants. So I bring this up because one of the fundamental issues relating to working is this seeming contrast between those who hire individuals they don't have to give benefits to, don't have to recognize. I've been to all 99 counties and we've seen companies that have brought people in and then kick them out when they start demanding stuff, used to undermine, suppress wages versus the argument of compassion. So talk about that issue, because that is an issue that Democrats and Republicans at the working class level have seemed to ally to, which I think is part of the reason we saw President Trump flip 200 Obama counties, because when it came to issues of illegal immigration versus undocumented, there was just a huge percentage of white working class Americans who just kind of share his views. So talk about where you are on that issue and why your position is the right position on that issue.
Well, absolutely. I'll tell you what, Iowa's been a leader when it comes to opening up the state and welcoming those who have no place to go. Governor Ray was a really great example of that. And this country is founded on immigrants and opening our arms to give everybody opportunity. I want to see our undocumented.
Well, I understand that, but from a party perspective, when President Obama had a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate, the Democratic House, Democratic Senate, and the Democratic President didn't change the law to make us a welcoming country. So in terms of, you're a member of Congress, you're speaking to this issue. What does your policy look like?
Well, first of all, I want to make sure that all of our dreamers have opportunity to become legal citizens. These are kids who have grown up here, that America is their country, and they're contributing economically. They've gone to school, they're getting jobs, and these people are helping our communities. So I want to make sure that they have a pathway to citizenship. I'd also like to see all of our law-abiding illegal immigrants have that pathway. But we do need to put good laws on the books.
Let me ask for a point of clarification, because in politics, those are the kind of terms we throw out, and then, like the old Soviet Union used to say, we make everything illegal so we can decide when to... Technically, if individuals are here illegally, then technically they could be considered non-law-abiding citizens. So
that's true.
So I need something. I need some more specificity on that. Those are the loopholes politicians use later on when you say, "Well, I'm not being inconsistent. They weren't law-abiding." Now that I've been redistricted and I now have a majority of Republicans, like when Greg Gansky got the majority of Neil Smith's district. So I need more specificity.
Sure. Well, when I say non-law abiding, I mean having broken the law in regard to criminal activity or other activities that have been that are dangerous to our community. Certainly, you pointed out. You're right that becoming here illegally is they've already broken the law. But trying to round up millions of people and deport them first of all, that's ridiculous. It's never going to happen. The cost to do that's phenomenal, and it's just not the right thing to do.
Let me ask you this, because we have, I think, 7 Democrats running, right?
Uh-huh.
And so part of my job is helping to distinguish between Democrats.
Uh-huh.
Because before you get to run against David Young, you've got to run against other Democrats. So that's why I'm going into the weeds on some of these things. Democrats voted to build the wall, including Senator Clinton, Hillary Clinton. President Clinton passed NAFTA and other things. He passed gun control legislation, but he did not do anything about this issue. President Obama got the American Affordable Care Act passed, but he did not do anything on this issue. So I'm asking, because this is a big issue in terms of wages, in terms
Sure.
of a lot of other government services, etc. I guess what I'm really trying to get is, where do you stand as a Democrat in terms of what your policy specifically looks like? Some people are like amnesty. Some people are, so what does your policy specifically look like?
Yeah, well, so I started down that path. I want to make sure that dreamers have that opportunity. I also want to bring people out of the shadows and make sure that, if they're law-abiding citizens, as I mentioned earlier, that they've got that opportunity to become legal citizens. At the same time, we do need stronger immigration laws. As you mentioned earlier, we have a heck of a lot of people that are flying under the radar within companies and being really abused within the system from a human rights perspective, from a pay perspective, and from opportunity. And so we need to make sure that those people come out of the shadows and that they're treated fairly and right in this country. So we need stronger laws. So I absolutely would push for good, strong laws to make sure that we keep our borders safe, that we keep criminals from coming into this country, and that we ensure that the security and safety of Americans is first and foremost. But at the same time, we've just got millions of people in this country that are good, law-abiding people who have contributed to their communities, and they need that opportunity. So it's a twofold piece. We have to strengthen the laws to make sure that we keep America secure and make sure that those people who are being abused under the system aren't anymore, but also give opportunity to all of those who have done so much for this country. And right here in our own backyard, in places like Perry and in Storm Lake, where they've really helped revitalize communities and bring it, opportunity both economically and from just a community and family perspective. And we need to make sure that those people have opportunity here.
In 2021, the Quota Act was introduced. Emergency Quota Act, because there was the discovery that a lot of people coming from Southern Europe, particularly Italy, had dark skin. And it really drew a contrast between our position on welcoming immigrants who are white versus immigrants who are brown. I'll say this last thing and move on. I've yet to hear a meaningful conversation about how we deal with Canadian illegal immigration. There are some hot button issues that exist in politics. In fact, some of these hot button issues create the partisan divide in our country. Are there any issues that you hold where you would clearly break from the traditional Democratic Party positions? Because once issues get to the floor, typically members of Congress vote with their party versus with other interests, except in certain instances. Like, you will always have a permission as a member from the Iowa delegation to vote for a farm bill, or to vote for ethanol, or to vote for wind power, or to vote for wrestling being in the Olympics. And that's the same thing in the Northwest. Whether you're a Republican or Democrat, you can always subsidize timber. And in Massachusetts, if you're a Democrat, you can always support military research because of Harvard and MIT. So outside of those very safe issues to break with party leadership, what are 2 or 3 issues you might break with party leadership, or are there any? I mean, you might, with full and complete conviction, vote every way Nancy Pelosi says you should vote. So where are 2 or 3 issues you might break from party dogma?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think where we stand right now, there probably aren't that many issues that I break with. I think that one thing that we need to be thoughtful about is our trade agreements, making sure that those are working for Iowans. There's some elements within NAFTA that probably should be looked at, which might break a little bit from Democrat political party leadership. And I think that we need to look at some of those just to make sure that they're economically viable for the people here in our state. So that might be one area. Other than that, I think we're moving forward in the right direction with healthcare. We want to make sure that everybody has affordable, effective care. The party also wants to make...
Well, you mentioned healthcare. Let me ask you this. Bill Clinton came out and said, "This is the craziest thing I ever heard." People lost, quoting Bill Clinton, people lost their doctors. Their premiums doubled and tripled. The quality of their care got cut in half. That's what Bill Clinton said.
You mean in regard to the ACA? Is that
yes.
Okay.
So Bill Clinton said in October of 2016. So is this working for Americans? I know that for a lot of Democrats, they got off easy because all they really have had to do the last year is oppose President Trump. Had Hillary Clinton won, there would have been a need for a serious conversation about. So getting beyond, whatever Trump supports we oppose, is that health care legislation that Bill Clinton just savaged, Bill Clinton, really working for the American people, including the fact that it led to the privatization of Medicaid in Iowa under a Democratic president?
That's right. Well, I'll tell you.
And the feds had to sign off on that.
There's definitely a lot within the Affordable Care Act that needs to be changed. We have a lot of opportunity there.
So as a member of Congress, what are those things you would push to be changed?
Well, first of all, we need to ensure that the subsidies are continuing to flow for expanded Medicaid, to make sure that our regional hospitals...
Under a privatized Medicaid or under a restored governmental control?
Not under a privatized Medicaid.
Because it was under President Obama that Medicaid in Iowa got privatized.
Well...
Not under President Trump. I need to clarify that. It was a Democrat who signed off on the privatization. So is that subsidies continued under privatized Medicaid, or do we restore government controlled Medicaid?
Oh, we restore government controlled Medicaid,
Okay.
because it's what's happening right now is not working for Iowans.
Okay.
And so that's one thing. So we've got to make sure those subsidies continue to flow, so that we continue to have opportunity for more players within the exchange. Then we need to reduce these premiums and our cost of prescription drugs. And boy, do we have some loopholes that we need to close within there. You know, I have a friend who right now, for her health issue, gives herself a shot once a week in her own home, real inexpensive, very convenient. She's going to age into Medicare, and because of the loophole that you can't negotiate prescription drugs within that, she's going to have to go into an office, get an infusion. Now all of a sudden we're bringing in administration, we're bringing in a healthcare provider, we're creating a lot of back-end operational work, and it's a big inconvenience and more cost for this particular person. Those are the types of loopholes that we need to close within the ACA.
Let me ask, because it seems that the reason why so many progressives and young people sat out the federal elections, and one of the reasons why President Trump won Iowa, which 10 years earlier went all Democrat, was because a lot of progressives and young people struggle with the compassionate conservatism that seems to be the ideological foundation for the Democratic Party versus the we don't give a damn conservatism of the Republican Party. For example, you mentioned pharmaceuticals. There are very few people who are intellectually honest today that argue against the benefits of medical marijuana. And yet, Democrats do not argue for medical marijuana. They do not push it. They argue for cheaper pharmaceuticals versus more expensive pharmaceuticals. So, where do Democrats begin being bolder as opposed to being simply more compassionate in their support of the status quo? Is that a fair question? If it's not, answer what you want to. This is one of those times when you can just ignore the question and answer something else if you want to. But it seems to me that the conversation isn't how do we make people healthy, it's how do we get the insurance companies taken care of, and how do we get the drug companies taken care of?
Yeah, well, my concern isn't how do we help insurance companies and drug companies. My concern is to make sure that all Iowans have opportunity for a healthy life. And a lot of that has to do with access and cost. And we need to make sure that every single person has access. We had a healthcare roundtable discussion.
But access to what? That's the question. Access to
Effective,
what?
affordable, preventative care, care that covers pre-existing conditions, and reasonable costs for prescription drugs. But I also agree with you. I think we need to look at alternatives in healthcare. One of the things that I want to do is make healthcare one of the big issues that I address out in Congress. Not just fixing the issue that we have right now related to access and insurance, but healthcare in this state and in this country from cradle to grave. All of the environmental impacts, and when I say environmental, I'm using that extremely broadly. Community, your surroundings. How is it that we, within the same zip code, have a 10-year lifespan difference for people because some people have access to good, clean food, a job that allows them to have a safe roof over their head, and others don't. And that's a community problem. That's about giving everybody opportunity for a good paying job. That's about making sure that we have clean food within all of our different communities so people can access it. That's about helping raise others up who are low income and making sure that they've got opportunity to go out and get a job so that they can have a good roof over their head. So I want to look at all of these root causes behind our health care as well. I'm lucky to say I've got people supporting and endorsing me that are heavily involved with mental health issues, that are doctors, that are on the Public Health Administrative Board here. All these people I'm talking to because these are issues that we need to address. Not only will they help us from a healthcare perspective, they're going to boost our economy and they're going to raise everybody up. So we need to look at healthcare from cradle to grave, and to the point that you brought up earlier, is what we're doing here just because we've been doing it all along in this country the right way? Are there other examples that we could take from other countries who are healthier, who have longer lifespans, that we should be utilizing? America's a great country, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't look to other alternatives to see if there are better things to help the citizens here.
I want to ask this last question. There's so much more we could have talked about, but our time's leaving. I want to ask this last question and then give you a chance to talk about a few of the key issues that you really are running on. Because I as a past candidate, I hated those interviews where I talked about everything else but what I really cared about or prioritized. So I'm going to give you that chance. But this last 2 or 3 minutes before you get a chance to tell folks where you are and why they should support you, what unique things would you do as a member of Congress outside of the vote to make an impact using your office?
Well, let's go back to the healthcare. I'm an avid exerciser. I'm a healthy eater. I'm a composter in my own home, and I think I want to be somebody who helps encourage other people to live healthier lifestyles. I find great joy in being outdoors. It's one of the things that has been a key part of my life, and I think people benefit from being outside, getting fresh air, being out into the environment, being around wildlife and natural resources. I'd like to see us promote that. A healthier lifestyle, exercising more often, taking walks. Just starting with that is a great way for a heck of a lot of people, and making sure that everybody has access to good, clean food. Those are key priorities, and I can work on those outside of voting. By coming, I'd like to come out and exercise with Iowans, take us out on hikes, go out and learn a little bit more about our environment. And so I think that's one thing that I can definitely be working on outside of Congress and writing bills. The other thing is education. I've been a very strong proponent for public education. I fought for and secured all-day kindergarten here in the West Des Moines School District, one of our biggest districts in the state, when I found out that literally half the kids lost a lottery, and didn't get the opportunity for all-day kindergarten. They got 2.5 hours. And I went to work on that, rolled up my sleeves. It took about 8 months. We had one last chance to get it pushed through with the board, and so I presented the data on the subject matter and equity and said, you got to get this changed for the kids next year. And they passed it. That superintendent's one of my big supporters. So education is going to be something where I'd like to come back to this community, work with our schools. I've done a lot in my kids' own schools with arts programs, with culture programs, and helping out wherever I could. And so that's another area where I'd like to come back to Iowa and be more heavily involved in our education system.
Okay. Tell people why they should support you on June 5th to be the Democrat that goes against David Young.
Absolutely. Well, I think there's several reasons. First and foremost, I think it's what I bring to the table. I'm a small business owner. I'm a mom. I certainly understand what it takes here in Iowa to raise a family and to help your family be successful. And I've also been a public servant working at the highest levels to solve major problems for people here in Iowa. I think with this job, it's a 2-year job out there, and there's a heck of a lot to do, and that's getting more and more every single day. And we need somebody who can hit the ground running. So the experience that I bring to the table, having solved complex problems, having brought jobs here, having worked with the federal government on a lot of different issues, and understanding what the implications are to the people that we're serving when we do put those bills into place. That's a big difference between me and any of the other candidates. But I also think those other outlying factors, the fact that I do understand what it takes to build and grow a small business, that I'm a mom who's got teenage boys and understand the difficulties that our families face, and certainly a strong business background as well at a corporate level. All of these things give me a good understanding of what we need right here in our corner of Iowa. And they're going to help me work on the key issues that we face. I want to get out there and address this healthcare issue, make sure that everybody has affordable, effective care. I want to shore up the resources for our schools, make sure that our K through 12 schools remain strong, and that we bring trades programs back here and help our kids who want to move into those roles, and that we cap our student loan interest rates at no more than 2%, so that our kids can come out and get a foot in life as opposed to paying off debt for 10 years. Also, I talked about bringing in good paying jobs, and I want to do that by protecting our environment at the same time. I had the opportunity to direct the governor's agenda on clean energy and the environment when we brought in the wind industry at fuller scale. And we put a heck of a lot of people to work in that process. So I certainly know how we can accomplish those types of things. And then I think lastly, we have got to quit selling our democracy to the highest bidder. So it's incredibly important that we have somebody out there that's going to fight to make sure that we take money out of politics and get dark money out of this as well. So we've got a heck of a lot to do in a very short period of time, and we need somebody who can hit the ground running, and secondly, somebody who doesn't ever stop until the job gets done. And Iowans will get that from me. I'm a fighter, and I know what I'm doing, and when I get to Washington, I'm going to hit the ground running and make sure that we get what we need here in our corner of Iowa.
Okay, well, thank you. How do people reach you if they want to learn more about your campaign?
Well, great. You can go to CindyAxneforCongress.com, spelled Cindy, C-I-N-D-Y, Axne, A-X-N-E. So CindyAxneforCongress.com. We've got a phone number there. You can like us on our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter, and certainly come out to any one of our meet and greets because we sure have a heck of a lot of them.
Well, thank you so very much.
Thank you.